What's up, guys? It's Pereira from Last Word on Hockey, and today I am with Sam Tirpak of DobberProspects. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. Obviously, the draft wrapped up just a few days ago. Take us through. You're a Leafs fan and everything, and you work at DobberProspects, so you work extensively with the draft and scouting prospects, just like I do for Last Word. Again, you're a Leafs fan. What were your thoughts on the Leafs draft class this year? Did you think they got a lot of value for the three picks that they had, or are you not a big fan?
I expected them to trade down actually a bunch of times. I got I was actually surprised that they didn't, but it makes sense knowing who they picked. Uh, Obviously, the second rounder, Matthew Neese, such a such a great player. Not the typical for Leafs, uh, given his size,
Yeah,
but obviously really good skater and score, can make plays, is physical, which is something I'm really looking forward to see how they continue to develop him over next 3 to 4 years uh, until he's ready. I actually wonder because he's a winger, right? Mostly winger.
yeah.
I wonder if the Leafs see something in him that suggests that he might be a center down the road, which they might uh, develop further in his development. So obviously that next Void, uh, I like the pick a lot. If there was an OHL season, I believe he would be I believe he would be a at least a second rounder.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what he showed last year was really, really promising. Um, and it's unfortunate, and I'm going to talk about a couple guys that played in the OHL and didn't get a season later on, and it really did make a big impact, in the draft and just the whole COVID situation kind of. Yeah, because I've looked up, I've obviously scouted Voight plenty, read articles on him, and saw what other people had to say, and I believe it was Smart Scouting that really like sold me on him the most. And really, like they said it best, like if he had an OHL season, he could have very well ended up being a first rounder too, depending
Yep.
on the kind of production that he puts up in that season. So big loss for him, especially, but could be a huge steal for the Leafs down the road. And I think you're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, a lot of offensive skill there. Lots of he, he's the type of guy like we saw Ty Tulio last year
Yeah.
in a similar fashion. He just he's smallish, but he plays much bigger than his size, and he's not scared to go to any corner, to any place, to get the puck, to get a goal, and so and so.
And the last pick there for the Leafs, I've seen some mixed reviews. Some Leafs fans are like, oh, there's potential here. We kind of need a guy like this, and maybe it could work out down the road. And others not so happy. What is your take on that last pick for the Leafs?
I it's mostly about what the Leafs development staff liked because we heard I believe it was John Lilly, the head scout for the Leafs, say that the goaltending scout and development coach as well was sold on Pexa uh, while while doing his work with Arthur Akhtemov, his teammate, and so that's kind of reason why I think he was selected by Leafs. They believe in him. The potential is there. Obviously, the stats say he had pretty meh season for MHL standards, even as an overager. But Leafs want to bet on the skill set instead of stats, and I think that's really smart. I'm not sure if he's going to be anything. It's a 6 round bet, so
Yeah, you're really not
whatever.
losing much with you're spending a sixth round pick on a guy. It's not.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
obviously last year, which was much better draft than this year, I believe.
yeah.
They had 12 picks, so it's not like they're losing some important pick or anything.
Yeah, and again, it's a goalie. You know, it's really hard to project goalies, especially from the MHL and the Russian ranks. So very well could be a steal down the road for the Leafs, just like Ty Voigt. Who knows? And again, the familiarity there with the Leafs organization definitely aided in getting him selected there. So overall, you'd say you really liked the Leafs draft class.
Yeah, yeah, I really did. What do you
And
think of
talking about
Tampa's?
Oh, I love the Dylan Duke selection. I think the Dylan Duke selection was fantastic. I know Corey Pronman had him ranked just inside the first round, I believe 32nd overall. Big athletic, the athletic guy, Corey Pronman, and that pretty much solidifies in my brain. I'm like, yeah, that I was right about him because I mean, not right about him because anything can happen, but in a sense that
Obviously,
I
yeah.
was relatively high on him, and a guy from the Athletic, Corey Pronman, was just as high on him as I was, and it's like, yeah, all
I
right,
had him around that spot as well, so
yeah, I
a lot
had
of
him
us
in
did.
I had him in like the 50 to 35 range, somewhere in that range. So it was a really good value pick. I really like the way he plays, gets to the front of the net, loves disrupting in and around the crease. Plays a physical game, though he might not have that size. But
Yeah.
really, the things that he needs to improve on is skating and bulking up for the most part, and that's easily doable and easily coachable.
Sounds familiar, right?
Yeah,
Mr. Point.
exactly. So guys like that, I love taking a chance on guys who may not be the best of skaters, but possess this like really high end awareness and ability to score goals. I think Dylan Duke has that. Definitely not going to compare him to Braden Point by any means, in terms of like skill set. But
Yeah,
yeah, no, he's definitely a promising prospect. I really like that pick. I also like the Miko Huhtinen pick. Is that I believe Miko Huhtinen is his name. I really
yeah.
like that selection too. Boomer bust to take on a seventh round selection, the last pick in the draft. Kind of reminds me of Andre Palat. Very unrefined game, but he possesses some pro like skills. I really like that pick in the last pick of the draft. You can't really go wrong with that. Um, Alternatively, I did not like the Roman Schmidt pick at all. Um, I just this draft in general, like looking at the draft classes back, and seeing guys like Ryan St. Louis, Trevor Wong, and other really notable names get completely undrafted, while guys like Logan Stankoven fell, pretty considerably for his skill set. So I
Yep.
feel like it was a very tough draft for NHL scouts and evaluators and guys within the NHL organization to, find players that they really like with COVID kind of interfering with their scouting abilities. That they banked more on, all right, this guy's big and a little bit skilled, so we're gonna take him over the 5'8" supremely skilled guy because he's big. He's like he just got good size to him. We can work with size better than we can work with a lack of size, which I don't understand how general managers can still have that mindset based on guys like Cole Caulfield having success in the playoffs this year. Braden Point's not exactly the biggest guy. He's one of the best NHLers in the National Hockey League right now. I mean, it's just mind-boggling that GM still fall into this hole of, well, this guy's big, so I'm gonna go this guy instead. And this draft class had that a lot. Again, Ryan St. Louis. I don't know how high you were on him heading into the draft, but he was in my early to mid second round. For him to fall out of the draft, to me was
Was
mind-boggling.
surprising, really surprising.
Especially Tampa had him like the last pick in the draft. I like Miko Houston, and don't get me wrong, the last pick in the draft, man. All the entire draft class. You had Shane Doan's son going to Arizona, Josh Doan. You had Luke Hughes joining his brother Jack in New Jersey. You had, I mean, there were a bunch of Colton and Kirby Doc now in Chicago. Kale McCarr with his brother Taylor, I believe is his name, Taylor McCarr.
I believe so. Yeah.
He's now in Colorado, and it's like it was like a volley for Tampa. It's like, here you go, this is your chance.
He is your free talented guy. He
Exactly.
he, he has PR with him. He has obvious connections with them. So
Yeah. It was a setup, a perfect setup for Tampa because even if he doesn't work out, Tampa can go like, well, listen, he's Marty St. Louis' son. We're not going to not take him. But if he does work out, it's like, damn, that was a great pick.
yeah,
To just really a win-win.
another San Louis proving doubters wrong.
Exactly.
There you have it.
It would be perfect for Tampa. They
Yeah.
just didn't. They didn't bite, but I get it. Again, he's small and he doesn't have the best skating ability. And again, Braden Point, same thing. Uh, so like I said, it's just it's funny seeing that GM still fall into that hole. But overall, I mean, not terribly upset at the Lightning picks that they made. Obviously, they could have done a lot better, in my opinion, especially with their first pick.
100%.
Um, yeah, there was value to be had with that first pick. I mean, Red Savage was still available at that rate at that spot, I believe. So it's like I would have much rather had Red Savage at that third round spot. I love his game. Obviously, you saw that I did an interview with him. I had him ranked in my first round. Like that would have been a great pick for Tampa in terms of value. Obviously, they wanted a defenseman, sure, um, but again,
Jake Parr was right there.
exactly, exactly. That's another. So I get the idea. Roman Schmidt's a big guy, has figure skating background. Even though he's not the fastest skater, he is pretty agile, um, and has good acceleration as well. From what I've seen, it's just his straight line speed. He's very slow. Doesn't win a whole lot of races to lose pucks, and that really concerns me. Uh, Defending against the rush as well, he had moments where he'd make really good plays against the rush, and he's very physical. So there will be times where he'll like stand out in a big way because a guy will come down the boards with his head down. He'll step up into him and lay a good hit on him. But there were a lot of times where he got burned too. There were other times where he was losing net front battles despite his size,
Mhm.
not getting inside, positioning on guys to, lift up his stick or to get him out and clear the crease. He just lacks in a lot of areas, and it really concerns me. Obviously, I want him to prove me wrong, just like with every prospect. But at the same time, there are a lot of concerns that I have for his game, and I know Tampa could have gotten more value for that pick. Um, Other than that, I mean, they had a pretty basic draft class. Took a couple. Got Pilinkoff, Daniil Pilinkoff, I think is a good high, potentially high upside pick. Outside of that, some yeah, just some names, just
Yeah.
some guys that they can.
Solid bets, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So not the biggest fan, not exactly harsh on it either. Um, so I'd say I give them a C grade for their draft class, which isn't bad considering their first pick was 96th overall. So I'll take it.
Yeah.
Which brings us now to our next segment here: picks that we love, picks that we don't. We'll start with your first pick that you love. Who do you have?
Xavier Borgo, my favorite personal throughout the year, was in my top 10 basically whole year, and he fell as expected. Um, Obviously, Oilers fans were very happy with the selection because they traded down from 20 to 22, and Oilers fans obviously wanted Jesper Wallstedt, which is, I get it. Borgo is an excellent forward, and he fits right into the whole Edmonton scheme of having guys that can play both center and wing. Because you have McDavid, obviously, you have Draisaitl, you have Ryan Nugent Hopkins, but if someone goes down, who is going to play second line center?
Right.
Ryan Nugent Hopkins can did it, but you want another option as well.
Right.
And Xavier Borgo can be your third line center, can be your top line right wing, can be your second line right wing, and would fit with all the styles that all those three lines would bring. Um, uh, Obviously, all those fans wanted Boston, which makes sense. But Borgo is a great pick, and I loved it for Oilers. He's going to be excellent for them. And yeah,
Yeah, I mean, again, watching Borgo, I was just as high on him as you were for the longest time, but I kind of gave in to the idea that he could fall, and so I started to look for holes in his game, try to figure out, okay, why is he, slipping down some rankings? Why is he expected to fall to the late first? And a few things that I gathered. Again, there wasn't anything major. I still am high on him. I still think, he's a really, really good player, but he's more of like a complementary piece. A
yeah,
team has to build around him, but that's exactly why he's such a perfect fit for Edmonton. Because Connor
yeah,
McDavid
Obviously.
Most likely McDavid's not going anywhere. Draisaitl most likely isn't going anywhere. So you throw him on a line with Connor McDavid. He's one of the few players that aren't currently in the NHL that project to be smart enough to play with McDavid. Because I just remember the first few times that I watched him, like way at the beginning of the year watching film, I was sitting there, I'm like, man, he's like in the neutral zone. He'll be skating up the ice, he'll catch a pass, and it's with like that. Puck's off his stick to a teammate, full speed, tape to tape pass, going into the offensive zone for a rush chance. His decision making is so unbelievably fast. His IQ and vision is so unbelievably high, and he
Yep.
can score goals.
Yep.
You know,
He disappears in offensive zone like not many people do.
yeah,
He finds spaces that other prospects his age or of similar level competition would not find. He finds spaces between checks, and someone said, I don't remember who it is, but great players find plays between checks, and in playoffs you can see it. Brett Marchand, uh, obviously we all kind of hate him for obvious reasons,
well,
but he's one of the best examples of that in the NHL.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
such
Very
a smart
slippery.
player.
Yeah, very slippery in coverage. So yeah, that's actually a really good compare. Obviously, Bergold doesn't play as physical as Marchand does, but he's just as slippery and
Yeah,
really good at finding those open lanes. That's another thing that he does really, really well.
when we are doing our meetings at Dover Prospects throughout the year, I kept telling everyone that I have Borgo high not because he has talent level of like Fabian Lissell or I don't know who else, but or William Eklund, but he's the perfect complementary player you want to find, and
Yeah,
he's not someone who would drive his own line necessarily, but you can put him with anyone on any top nine line, and he's gonna produce, he's gonna create offense, and he's gonna give you versatility positionally and stylistically. And in draft like this, where you don't have much that superstar level of player, really, that's the kind of player I thought teams would want, but obviously he slipped a little bit, so I can pour ice cold water on that a little bit, but I love the pick.
and you brought up one of my favorite picks. He was my number one ranked prospect for probably the last 2 months, 3 months maybe. Fabian Lysell, 21st overall to the Boston Bruins. I thought that was a ridiculous, ridiculous steal. I knew he was going to fall, and I was fine with that, the idea of it. Um, so going into the draft, I knew he wasn't going to be first overall. It was pretty much set in stone, whether I agree with it or not, that Owen Power was going first overall. Um, I knew Eklund was higher up on a lot of boards, and he fell to seventh. I knew Gunther, McTavish, and those guys were jumping up draft rankings. Ben Years was not going to fall outside of the top three. He's just so solid that So I knew there was a chance Lysell could drop around 10, maybe closer to 15, but I did not expect him to fall outside of the top 20 at all. And the Bruins, I think this is a really good landing spot for Boston as well, trying to find that new core. Bergeron, Marchand, they're getting older. Pastrnak's going to need new line mates. Obviously, Lysell may never end up panning out as like a first line winger. There's a chance that he doesn't even pan out at all. I know there's a lot of concerns about his floor. But one of the things I disagree with the most, because I know going into the draft, a lot of people were questioning Lysell in many ways. He's this excellent skater, so fast, so agile. He
So
has
aggressive as well.
very aggressive skater. Yeah, he'll skate right at you as a defender, and you won't. He'll come so fast that you kind of like freeze. You're like a deer in headlights. You're like, all right,
What is he doing? Like,
yeah.
and he takes a puck of you.
He
Yeah.
just skates. Exactly, yeah. He skates so fast right at you that you have like half a second to process. Okay, he's coming. Move the puck, and you either misfire on the pass, or he'll just pick it clean away from you and have a good scoring chance because of it. Um, but I understand like there were concerns about his processing, his hockey IQ, and I honestly don't agree with that at all.
Mhm.
I don't see how you can think that he has poor not decision making, but like low IQ. Yes, he utilized his skating to the fullest degree. He would just burn defenders constantly. I forget who said it, but it was either Smart Scouting or Tony Ferrari. Can't remember which one it was. Actually, I don't think it was Tony because Tony was just as high on him as I was. So it was not Tony, but I believe it was Smart Scouting who talked about how Lascelles would always go with the same play every single time through the transition. He would take it up the boards as fast as he could, start to cut towards the middle, and then immediately jump back to the outside, lower his shoulder, dip his shoulder, and go cut right to the net or go for a wraparound. That was his go-to move every time he had the puck in the neutral zone, skating up the ice. And when you have the sort of confidence that Lascelles does in his skating and stick handling, you're going to do the same thing. The talent that he has stick handling the puck and the talent that he has from a skating perspective is absurdly high. There's no question why he kept going back to that same thing because you simply cannot keep up with him as a defender.
Because it works. That's simple.
Exactly. It works and he's confident in it, and you want to see that confidence, whether it works consistently or projects well to the NHL level. It works for him. He's confident in it, and you want to see that confidence in him because you can build off of that. His passing, his vision is really, really good as well. He's got good finishing ability. Lascelles is one of the best transitional players in this draft class, in my opinion, because of his skating, because of his stick handling. Were there times that he put himself in tight spots for no reason? Absolutely. Most players do at that level, though. Not every player is perfect, and Lascelles
Yep.
he needs to refine his offensive game, and that's pretty much it. Because his defensive game is solid. Obviously, still needs to improve to get to the NHL level defensively, but his defensive game matured throughout the season. From when he got traded at the beginning of the year and switched his development program in Sweden to the end of the year, I mean, his defensive game improved a lot. And again, his offensive game, yes, he stick handled himself into tight corners, lost the puck, turned it over. Yes, he forced passes into high danger areas that were picked off and sent the other way. I get it. He also didn't play that often. You look at a guy, again, William Eklund's a good comparable for Lascelles because they played in the same league, they're the same age. Eklund carved out a bigger role for himself and made the most out of it, which is why he was taken before Lascelles and why I wasn't shocked that he was taken before Lascelles. But what he showed in the relatively small role in the SHL was that he can play really, really good hockey. So I get the concerns. He's not the biggest guy either playing that sort of aggressive style, so that he'll need to bulk up and work on getting a lot stronger to be able to translate to the NHL level. He also needs to make sure that his skating is still just as effective on a smaller ice surface, which is another concern that Lascelles has. But honestly, his skating is so ridiculously good. And again, to go back on his go-to move that people have concerns with, look at Connor McDavid highlight reels. That's literally the same thing Connor McDavid does. Lascelles plays that same sort of style. I'm not saying he'll be a Connor McDavid by any means. The concerns are overblown a little bit for Lascelles, in my opinion.
There are some off-ice stuff that might be issue. I haven't heard, but Swedish guys, like you saw on Twitter that there were some considering him D&D, but obviously it's not. I don't know what it is. I don't want to speculate on anything, right? But from straight up value perspective, Lizzo at 21 is an excellent selection for Bruins.
And you talked about off ice issues. At least he's not picked number 32 in this draft, and I
31.
think. Oh wait, was it? Oh yeah, 31. That's right, because the voided pick. At least it's better than pick 31. So we'll just stick with that. We won't talk about that, I don't think. Which takes us to the first pick that we don't love. We might as well interchange it. Who was the first pick that you didn't really like all that much in this draft?
My personal one is like, what the hell was Ottawa doing? Obviously, Tyler Boucher is great prospect. Like he's not some scrub. He but he would be there at 39 when they had their next pick. He
or
would
even
be there,
or even later too.
or even later. He
Yeah.
would be there, 100%.
One of the gripes that I have, well, not one of the gripes, one of the things that I like about the pick, purely, just some of the positives from that pick is he plays a playoff style of hockey, but that's about it. He basically plays,
Obviously, he's good. He's like
yeah, no,
top 64 pick. He's top 64 quality player. But at 10 overall, it's just
yeah, it's not a good pick because he doesn't have upside. Not that he doesn't have upside. He doesn't have a lot of upside. Like he's not going to be a guy that you put in your top 6 down the road. He's like a third line guy, and he basically plays a 2021 Montreal Canadiens hockey kind of game where he might not do all that well in the regular season. He's not going to put up a whole lot of points, but he plays this aggressive style that will create openings in the playoffs. And I mean, you can't go wrong with that necessarily if he pans out well and makes.
I believe he's gonna be an NHLer.
Yeah, no, I believe so too. I think he has a really relatively safe floor compared to some of the other picks that were made in the first round.
Obviously,
Like Lascelles doesn't have a very high floor. I would say he probably has a higher floor than Lascelles and a safer chance of making it to the next level. But really, that's the most I have for Boucher. It's just at 10, that's a bit rich, especially with Lascelles still available.
that was wild. As I said like a million times over, he's a good player, but not at 10. That's just wild. That's just wild.
Yeah. My first pick. So I know a lot of people are probably going to disagree with me for good reason. But the first pick I didn't love from this draft class is Mason McTavish at 3rd overall to Anaheim. Now, again, McTavish, just like you said with Boucher, obviously McTavish is more skilled than Boucher in a lot of different ways. So overall, he's a better player. I think he has top 6 potential. I would put him more as like a second line guy down the line, like a safer evaluation, safer projections, like second line winger for Mason McTavish.
Yep.
The problem that I have with it isn't the skill set that he possesses by any means. I think McTavish is a really, really good player. He's a guy that plays a very aggressive style of hockey, similar to Brad Marchand, where we saw it in the World Juniors. After every whistle, when he was on the ice, he was
scrum.
always getting involved in scrums.
Him and Altman.
McTavish is a guy that I think will be a very good agitator at the next level, really good at getting into the opponent's heads. And he's supremely skilled too. He knows how to score. He's got one of the best shots.
He can score from anywhere.
Really can.
Find ways to score in different ways.
Yeah. And he's a guy that teams are going to hate to play against, but if they were on their team, they would love to have him. He's not going to be a point per game player at the NHL level. He probably has good 30-goal upside, but I don't know if he'll put up 70+ points. I think that's a bit too much for me.
That's a bit rich, I believe.
Yeah. And I mean, I understand this draft class isn't the strongest, right? Like you're not going to find a superstar in this draft class. So on the surface of things, you look at that pick and you're like, you know what? Maybe that's not too bad. They're banking on his two-way game, two-way ability, his physical style of play, and his overall skill set and ability in the offensive zone. But William Eklund was right there. William Eklund, in my opinion, is more skilled than Mason McTavish. I'm not saying this to bash on Mason McTavish, but William Eklund has a skill set that, if in this draft class, he's one of the few guys that could be a superstar. And they took Mason McTavish. I get it. They take Mason McTavish there. I understand why. He had a good World Juniors tournament. He plays a style of hockey that all GMs would love to have on their team. But William Eklund was right there, and that's the problem that I have with that pick. It's nothing against McTavish or anything, but Eklund has more upside. He has just as safe of a floor, in my opinion. That would have been a much better pick there.
I expected them to go after a goal scorer. I just didn't know which one, because obviously they have Trevor Zegras, and he's an excellent playmaker, and so I expected them, especially in this draft class, to go after a goal scorer.
Yeah.
I thought that they would trust Zegras at center, but with McTavish, it doesn't look like that necessarily. I
Yeah,
thought they were gonna draft Dylan Genter.
that's the only issue I have with McTavish. But to bring it back, let's make it a little bit more positive. Who's the second guy that you thought that you really liked in this draft class for a pick?
I like I like Jack Barr's selection in Dallas. They got him in fifth round, and I have no clue how he was still there to be had. Just like how the guy is gonna be I would say if he makes the NHL down the road, like safe two-way bottom four defenseman,
Yeah,
like uh, a guy that's gonna be I would say similar to Justin Hall in style, but obviously from a second rounder in the year like this, like you shouldn't expect really more.
yeah,
Um, but he's really good. He skates so well, so dynamic,
yeah,
and he's obviously more of an offensive guy, I would say, based on the games I saw. But he has excellent gap control and defensive abilities as well. So he's more like a two-way guy that's uh, that's gonna be like I would say safe prediction a third pair guy on next level. And if you get that in fifth round, that's like how he was available there. And obviously, we saw former Panther scout say that if there is some discrepancy between like public rankings and where the guy goes, it's mostly because some of ice character question marks. But I'm not sure if Jack Barr has any. We interviewed him with Dobber. Tony did
yeah.
an excellent game breakdown as well with him, and he said that he's an excellent young man. So I'm not sure what the issue was, but him slipping to fifth round was something I really did not expect. And obviously Dallas picked him and our Aitor Martino around before that. Just round or two, I believe. I'm not sure if it was third, probably third, but he's such an excellent pick.
Yeah, and again, you talked about safely you could project him as a bottom pairing guy in this draft class. Why wouldn't a team go for him a lot sooner?
Right?
Uh, yeah, exactly. I mean, you had again, and not to knock on Tyler Boucher or any of the guys taken in the first round, but there were some guys, especially Boucher, taken way earlier than they should have. Whereas guys like Barr, who are safer with a good amount of skill,
Really
falling,
projectable guys. Like
yeah, really projectable guys that are falling to the fifth round. Like, and there were some seventh round picks that have some value too. Like, and again, undrafted guys that have a lot of value, especially Trevor Wong and Ryan St. Louis. To go back to those guys, like a lot of skill fell or went completely undrafted, and one of them was Jack Barr, obviously. So yeah, that was a great pick for Dallas as definitely for them again.
Dallas got a lot of value. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. The second pick that I really liked, Stanislav Fazil, 68th overall to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Stan, you heard me talk about.
How the hell did he fell to third round? I have no idea.
You know better than most people that I've interacted with, you and Gabriel Foley. I talked to a lot about Stanislav Fazil, a lot, because I wanted to do a deep dive on him because I knew his defensive game is just ridiculous. Like he's one of the best
So smart.
class. Yeah, that like his stick work in the defensive zone is fantastic. His positioning in the defensive zone is fantastic. He engages in dirty areas, puck battles every time that he can, but he'll never like throw himself into those battles if it's not if it's not necessary. Like he's a very smart,
He
calculated.
always makes the right decision.
Exactly. Always makes the right decision. He had the situational awareness. the positional awareness is through the roof when it comes to his defensive zone play. And there's no question about that, which, again, I thought safely he would be, at the very least, a late second. You know what I mean? Like, I did not expect him to fall outside of the first 2 rounds because of his defensive skill. And he's not a small guy either. Like, NHL GMs, at the very least, should have looked at him and been like, oh, he's got decent size. Let's take a chance on him over, a smaller guy, right? So I was shocked that he fell outside of the top 2 rounds. But again, I wanted to do a deep dive on him and look at some of it like some other upside. Because again, everyone knew about his defensive game. What else could I dig up about his game? And one of the main things that I got from talking to you and Gabe was transitional play. And so I did a deep dive on his transitional play, and he was really good in transition, really good at moving the puck up the ice out of the defensive zone. So he'll make a really good defensive stop, and he's quick to pick up his head, look for that outlet pass, and he has really good vision, and he's not afraid to be a little bit creative with his passing ability. I remember beginning of the year, can't remember what tournament it was, but it was an international tournament in the defensive zone. He got the puck in and around his net, and he picked up his head and just a long flip all the way above everyone else and perfectly landed right in front of his teammate for a breakaway opportunity. And that epitomizes Stanislas Vazil. He's creative in transition, and he's not afraid to push the pace a little bit, but he's very, very calculated with how he moves the puck up the ice. He has some skating deficiencies, which, I saw a lot of issues where if there was pressure on him, there was a forechecker on him, he didn't have the stick handling ability or the skating ability to break away from that forechecker, so he struggled a bit when he was pressured, and he could have some issues going to a smaller ice surface. But the transitional ability, the smarts that he does possess, is really high end, and I have no issues looking at that and saying that that's projectable.
He's really, really projectable player.
Very. I could see him going to the NHL by next year. He's that talented in my eyes. I think his offensive game needs a lot of work because, again, I
don't think it translates. I said my piece on that. I don't believe it will translate well. But like with him, you are getting a guy that's if you do his development right over next, I would say 4 years. Let's say 4 years, right? You can get a defenseman that's kind of like Kelvin DeHaan, very, very smart, very, very defensively efficient, I would say, and moves the puck really well. Obviously, offense is question mark with him as well, but you get a really projectable player, and Columbus got one in third round, 69th overall. Nice.
Yeah. So again, we talked about the picks that we like. How about the second pick that you don't like? Again, this is another one that people are going to disagree with me on, but I'll have you start first.
You're going to get blasted for yours. But
yeah.
My second not so favorite is Nolan Allen to Chicago at the end of the first round. And I'm like, dude, you can't have this guy at the end of the third round because he has no offensive game. There is nothing. Like, there is nothing there. He's just defense. He's good there. He's a good defensive game, but there is nothing on offense. And Nolan Allen is not bad. He's a good defensive defenseman. Yeah. But first rounder, come on, man. No.
Yeah, no.
With all due respect to everyone involved, just no.
So this one, again,
You're going to get blasted.
Yeah, I'm going to get blasted, but that's all right. I'll take it. I'll take it. If I'm proved wrong, I'll accept it. But if I'm proved right, I'll feel bad for the guy, but I was right. So it's a goalie, not named Jesper Wallstedt, taken in the first round. So Sebastian Cossa. Don't like that pick. Now, I have to explain myself here. So again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know goalies or, how to evaluate goalies the proper way. That's something, I am trying to do a better job of, because again, there's so much in terms of technical ability. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know those techniques and I know what they mean, you know what I mean, or how to properly evaluate it. But I do play goalie, and I know, certain aspects of playing the goaltending position, what makes a goalie good, what makes a goalie not so good. I know how important certain aspects of being a goalie is. And in my viewings with Kosa, I just wasn't all that impressed. Now, maybe I just got a bad batch of games. And again, that can happen when evaluating goalies. It could just be one of the, because goalies are generally hard to predict. They're not going to be like a Fabian Lascelles where every single game, he's going to be a really good skater. He's going to have a couple moments with his stick handling. He's going to show up in the transitional aspect of play. He might not score a whole lot of points or, show up a whole lot in the offensive zone, but at least you know what you're getting in Fabian Lascelles just about every single game. With goalies, you don't know what to expect because you can have a guy
it's
like
all on development.
exactly.
Really.
Exactly. You can have a guy like Jesper Wallstedt who, oh, he's good at rebound control, he's good at this and good at that, but one game he could give up a whole bunch of rebounds just because he's off. And then are you just going to change your whole evaluation because of that one game? So it's really difficult for me to sit here and say that, I'm right about this. But again, from what I saw, he was very, I don't know, he was not very mechanical in his movements. He seemed a bit he's just not very smooth in his movements. Like watching Jesper Wallstedt and then watching Sebastian Kosa. Wallstedt's one of the most technically sound goaltenders I've ever seen from his age group. Like his technical abilities are absurd. Whereas Kosa, he was just all over the place at times. It seemed like, his lateral movement was good, but he seemed to overcommit to certain shots and take himself out of position at times. He didn't seem very smooth in his movements either. So I wasn't a big fan. Kosa was never cracked my first round rankings. For a while, he was in my early third. I started to ease up on him a little bit because I felt I was being a bit mean. Not mean, but a bit too much with my rankings. So I watched him a bit more, and I moved him up to my mid-second. But that was the highest I'd moved him up to. So when I saw him get taken before Jesper Wallstedt, that's what made me not a fan. If he was taken in the first round, I was perfectly fine with that because that seemed to be the way that it was headed anyways. But in no way, shape, or form did I think he'd be taken above Jesper Wallstedt. One thing I will say, though, he was taken by Detroit. The last goalie taken by Steve Yzerman, if I'm not mistaken, in the first round at least, is Vasilevsky. So I'm not going to say.
I trust Yzerman and Verbeek enough.
Yeah. So Detroit fans, you have a good GM. He knows what he's doing.
And you have a guy to blast.
Yeah, I'm just a 20-year-old kid that loves watching film. That's really all it is. So don't take my word for it. My biggest thing is he didn't look very technically sound in my viewings, and Jesper Wallstedt, in my opinion, is just a better pick there. But and especially because Steve Yzerman loves his Swedes, or maybe not Steve Yzerman, but the Detroit Red Wings in general just love Swedish players.
As soon as Detroit moved up there, I thought, okay, they're 100% drafting Wallstedt, and I'm like, and then they pick Kosa. I'm like, okay, I disagree with that, but Kosa is still really good. I think the problem with, as you mentioned, the technical aspect of the movement with him, I think he's just still getting used to that 6'6" frame. And he's not so smooth with it just yet. He has the skill set of a possible elite goalie on the next level. You see his statistical background over years is just great numbers and great numbers. So that tells me that he's just getting used to the 6'6" frame, just filling it up, getting the movement down, and obviously question marks are there, valid. He was not the best goalie this year, in my opinion. That was Wallstedt. But some of the problems I believe, are stem from him just getting used to his big body as a key contributor to the team. So obviously he was picked a little higher than I thought he would. Uh, then I expect him to go around that range, but it would have been after Wallstedt.
Yeah, that, and I'm kind of in the same boat. Like first round pick, sure. It's a goalie, it's a risk, regardless of how you want to draw it up. Wallstedt's a big risk too. But again, Wallstedt is more projectable because of his rebound control and some of the technical abilities that he has. He lacks a little bit in athleticism, but Wallstedt is just a better goalie. He played at a much higher level.
There are
This,
really no red flags in his game
yeah,
that I picked up, or goalie scouts picked up, because we have one at Dobber who's doing a great job with goalies, and he said like there are no like super red flags with him. Obviously, some issues that will get hammered out uh, through development, but he's just a safe goalie. Like,
one of the few instances where you can say a goalie's safe is
yeah,
Jesper
like
Wall.
yeah, it was Spencer Knight in 2019 where I was like, okay, he's gonna be NHLer. I don't care what anyone says because he's safe goalie.
Yeah,
I have same feeling with Wallstedt.
yeah. So again, for Detroit, there, I get it. Kosa could be a really good goaltender at the next level at some point. I don't necessarily agree, but again, I get it. And again, Eiserman is just a hell of a GM. He knows what he's doing. And if there's any GM that would take that risk on Kosa before Wallstedt, I'm not surprised it was Eiserman. And again, his last first his last first round goalie was Andre Vasilevsky. Detroit fans, don't worry about it. I just have my
Also, it's
concern.
gonna be good, Detroit fans. Don't worry about it. And Kyle will be wrong. You can blast him in 3 to 4 years.
I want to be wrong. I want to be wrong in these
Yeah,
instances. No, I want to be right about Fabian Lysell. I want to be right about Stanislav Fazil. And I want to be right about the third guy that I really like, which we'll get to in a moment. But the guys that I'm saying I don't like, I want them to prove me wrong. Like, back to guys that we like. Your last one. Who's one of your favorite picks in this draft?
Alexi Heimosalmi. And obviously, it was Carolina who picked him. Just
Yoki Nevalainen making his presence known there in Carolina.
yeah, him and Koivunen there with second round picks. Yeah, I told him right away after he selected them. Dude, those were steals, man. Congratulations. Heimo Sami is just an excellent two-way defenseman, great skater, a great all-around player. Not that physical. He needs to improve that, I believe. Similar shape to what Topi Nimela was last year. He is excellent puck mover.
Yeah.
Just so smart with his movements and with his both offensive and defensive game. And he's in the mold of okay, he's talented enough where you can say he is highly skilled, but he has the floor to match it. I believe
Yeah.
there are not many defense that you either get defensemen who are okay. You have Luke Hughes, who's gonna be offensive superstar most probably from offensive standpoint. He's
Yeah.
gonna produce because
Yeah.
he's just drives play, uh, and from the back end. And then you have guys who are like Evan Naus, who are okay. He has high floor, but his ceiling is not that high.
Yeah.
And with Heimo Salmi, I think it's a perfect mix of the two, where you have floor of an NHLer with skill of top four offense based two-way defenseman.
Yeah.
And he was a first rounder for a bunch of us. Um, I expect him to be a second pair defenseman on the next level, but to get him around 50 is just excellent work.
My last pick that I really loved before we get to our last pick that we don't really love was a guy that I interviewed a couple months back. Played in the U.S. NTP squad and captained the U.S. World Juniors, the under 18 squad, was Red Savage.
What a
He
name,
went,
by the way.
a great name. He went to Detroit, of course. Steve Eiserman. I had him ranked. I believe it was like 24th. At my final rankings, I believe it was 24th. It was in the 20 to 30 range that I had him in, anyways. So 20 to 30 range.
Mhm.
The fact that he fell outside of the top 100 is just, to me,
Bananas.
absurd. Absurd.
Yeah.
He plays with a really high motor. He constantly moves his feet. It's very rare to watch a game or a shift of his and see him just standing and waiting. He's constantly moving his feet, whether it's forechecking, back checking, defensive zone coverages, with the puck in the offensive zone or without the puck in the offensive zone. He's always moving his feet, always. And he's there were times throughout the season where he would make this ridiculously flashy play with his playmaking ability. One in particular was towards the end of the first period. I forget who they were facing, but it was towards the end of the first period. He chipped the puck past the defenseman in the neutral zone and won the race to the puck at about the hash marks with the defenseman right on him, on his left shoulder. And he stopped along the boards on his backhand and without looking threw a backhand pass tape to tape to noted 7th round selection Justin Janicki, and he buried it. Um, it's plays like that where he can flash. It's not consistent. Red Savage doesn't have the most consistent offensive game, especially from a playmaking perspective. But he is so consistent in just his ability to find open space and to make an impact in any sort of way in the game, in all facets of the game. He's good in transition. He's really good in the defensive zone. And he's good enough in the offensive zone. He showed enough flash in the offensive zone that teams can look at that and be like, all right, well, clearly he has skill here. Let's build off of that.
Yep.
It comes down to player development, but it's Detroit, run by Steve Eiserman. They know how to develop players there. He could end
Exactly.
up he could end up being a first line guy in the long run. I think that's a bit rich for Savage.
That's a rich. I would say.
It's a bit rich for Savage, but I have all the confidence in the world in Steve Eiserman and his staff.
I believe he's gonna be an NHL.
Yeah,
Like,
I think safe projection, middle six. Um,
could be.
could play anywhere in the top 9, similar to Dylan Duke, that sort of thing, where he could play anywhere on the top 3 lines and have some success, because he's not going to make very many mistakes, especially defensively. Um, but I think, again, with the right development, if he can get his playmaking and his scoring ability, you know, get it to be more consistent and take better advantage of it, he could be a really good NHLer at some point. I have a lot of faith in Red Savage and in his play style and just his skill set. I have a lot of faith in him ending up as one of the biggest steals in this class for sure. Which brings us to your last don't love pick. Who'd you have there?
My last I don't like pick is it's not that I don't like the player, but he was picked around too high, I would say. Wyatt Johnston. He was picked 20, 23rd, I believe, by Dallas. Which obviously I just spoke about the Jack Parr from Dallas, just like they had great draft, and I just mentioned Wyatt Johnston. His motor just doesn't stop. He's gonna be a great third line center, I believe, on the next level. His two-way game is really good, and the offense is there. He showed the offense, but I don't think he's a first round caliber player.
Yeah, I
Even
think.
though the whole factor of he didn't play the whole season until under 18s,
Yeah,
obviously has a factor in that, but I don't think he would be a first rounder even if he had full season.
yeah, and
Having any like superstar level production.
Yeah, no, he won't be a superstar. Again, like you said, third line, I think is a safe
Safe
projection.
center. I would say, like, he's good player. I'm not bashing the player. I just
Yeah. I see an NHLer in him for his play style.
definitely.
But yeah, I think he's another one of those cases where he played well in the World Juniors. Granted, in a suppressed role with Canada, but still played well. And I think that's about all the general managers needed to say, all right, well, we like his play style. He did well in the only competition he played all season. Let's take a risk on him. I think it was a bit much to use a first round pick on him. I think he would have been available.
I would say that because Dallas had a smart draft this year. Like, I would say this. I'm not sure what would have happened in real life, but I believe if they traded down into second round, they will get him early second easily
Yeah, if they traded
and get
back,
another pick.
and yeah, they could have had him in the second round, Oturatu maybe, with their extra pick, and then they still would have gotten Jack Barr, and they still would have gotten who was the other pick that you mentioned, Ayrton Martino, correct?
Arthur Martino. Yeah.
That would have been another, like they could have had all of those guys with an additional pick in Antaratu. So Chase Stillman was the last pick that I didn't love, and I think you can agree with that a little bit. That one was, I mean, late first round. New
Another
Jersey,
good player who was taken too high. Like,
yes, he's a good player. There's no question about it. I think he's not as safe as a Wyatt Johnston, but has sort of the same skill level as Wyatt Johnston and could play a similar role down the line. Um, you know, in New Jersey, he had a couple first round pick. They had Luke Hughes, and that's their great value, like their great value pick there at fourth overall, and that gives them a little bit of leeway, for their end of the first round pick. But usually, when you have a little bit of leeway, it's like to pick a Simon Edvinsson esque player, where the upside is dramatically high, but the floor isn't. Like that's what it means to have some leeway. That's not this pick, and that's why I have an issue with it. It's not as bad as people might think it is because again they had Luke Hughes, like they had other first round picks, but there were other good players available to them. Haturatu, Nikita Chibrikov,
I have
Logan
I
Stankoven.
don't remember exactly where their next pick was or would have been, but like they can. It's same each year with some teams. Just you can get this player a round or two later
Yeah,
without
yeah,
any issues.
yeah. And again, like uh, Zach Dean, still available. Olen Zellweger, still available. Francesco Pinelli, still available. Alturatu, still available. Logan Stankoven, still available. Nikita Chibrikov, still available. That pick was questionable because look at all the talent that went after him. And they all have more upside. And arguably, you could say a couple of them had a safer floor. Um, like I think Ratu has a safer floor. Uh, Dean, I think, has a safer floor too. I mean, we can agree to disagree on that one. I know there were mixed reviews on Zach Dean, but I like his game. I think he projects to be pretty safe. Um, so
Doesn't shine, but he's
yeah,
projectable player.
yeah, exactly. Whereas Stillman's not as still projectable, but not as projectable as Dean. And
That's a bottom six winger, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Bottom six winger. And to get that in the late first, that's not terrible because, there are probably going to be 10 NHLers out of this draft, right? So if you can get one of those select few that do make that next step at the NHL level, there's value in that. But in the first round, to go for a guy that at best will be a third line guy, probably, that's that's a bit early, especially with the other talent on the board. Yeah, Stillman, like I said, he's got good size. 6'1", 183. He just needs to fill out his frame a little bit more. He'll probably grow about an inch or two. So by the time he's an NHL player, he'll probably be 6'2", 6'3", and about 200 pounds, which is really good size. He plays a power forward game. Like he always gets to the dirty areas, loves causing havoc and in front of the net.
Like, he's a good player. We're not
Yeah,
bashing the player.
yeah. No, he's a really good player. He plays a really good style of hockey that in New Jersey, if they're a playoff team by the time he goes there, he could provide some value similar to like a Yanni Gord, a Blake Coleman,
Absolutely.
and that's the kind of player that he projects to be. But that's probably his ceiling. a Yanni Gord, a Barclay Goodrow type player. He could be a Barclay Goodrow type of player at the next level, and then there's absolutely value in that. But in the first round, with some of the players that were still available, I don't agree with it. There were worse picks, but those were mid rounds. So in terms of value that could be had, I think he's a little bit worse than those guys. But there were some really questionable picks in the mid rounds as well that were worse. It's just he's more notable because he was a first round pick. So again,
Good player too
New
early.
Jersey fans not knocking this pick. Yeah, exactly. Um, so that does it for the picks that we love, picks that we don't love, which brings us to the final part, which is the team that we think came out on top as the biggest winners. We have two different teams. I know you mentioned two teams, and you're going to narrow it down to one for us here. You can start. What team do you have? I think I know exactly what team you have, but what team did you have as the big winner for
I
you?
was thinking between Carolina and Dallas.
The
But
usual suspects.
I have to go with Dallas because, like, okay, Carolina had their great picks, like Heimosalmi, Koivunen in round 2. But to get Jack Barr in round 5 and then before that, get Ayrton Martino, who was borderline first rounder in round 3, it's just, that's an excellent work by Dallas Scouts and their whole team.
Yep.
Really not expected based on previous results, but really solid draft in terms of value, and that's all you really need to aspire to draft, all for value. Because, like, if you draft for certain players, like, okay, sure, but uh, draft for as much value as you can get, because down the road some of those picks are going to be traded. Some of those players are going to be used to get better players, more impactful players. And if you can stockpile players who have value to other teams, who they missed out on draft day, and etc., and you can then trade them, then you get a value out of those picks. Like, for example, you won't have to trade two first rounders, like first rounder and a top 6 projectable player, for, I don't know, impact number 2 defenseman. But you can trade essentially first rounder and a fourth rounder if you draft a fourth rounder that you develop and has value around the league because of his skill set and projectability and all that.
Yep.
So you're basically lowering your trade values down the road.
Right.
Get a
Exactly.
better deals
Exactly.
if you don't use those guys.
Yeah. And one of the picks that you talked about, Ayrton Martino in the third round, I had him ranked 20 in the 25 to like 40 range. So the tail end of the first round, early second. He is kind of like a Fabian Lascelles, but with less overall skills, like lesser skill set. Because his skating, he makes his skating impactful on the ice in all the ways you can imagine. He is one of the better skaters in the class, and there's a lot of value to be had with that. He's basically, in my opinion, and this is the connection that I made, he's basically Fabian Lascelles light. Like, not quite as good of a skater, not quite as gifted with pure skill.
Watered down version of Fabian Lisson.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah. And there's plenty of value to be had in that. Still worthy of a late first, early
Like I
second.
said, draft is all value, and you want to get value, as much value as you can, unless you can make a selection of a player that you trust is going to be an NHL, which is outside of top 15 almost impossible.
Yeah. So
If you, like, don't have, like, future technology that you're going to predict future.
yeah. So Dallas absolutely had a really, really good draft, but it wasn't. They weren't my big winners. My
I
big
know.
winner of the draft was the Detroit Red Wings. Again, Steve Yzerman, man,
He does his work. He's hands on always. He's always at those little tournaments. He's
Always.
always there. Like he's gonna be at Linkas, I believe, as well.
Wouldn't shock
Gonna-
me. Wouldn't
Yeah,
shock me.
like yeah,
So again, Detroit had 8 draft picks. So they have a pretty decent haul overall. So they're going to hit on some, they're going to miss on some. Probably 4 and 4, half and half. I would say they're going to hit. Other half they're not going to hit. But looking at the picks that they have, a lot of them look like guys that I would say could hit in the long run. Simon Evanson, not the biggest fan of him. I don't doubt his skill set. I think his offensive upside is outstanding. He's got NHL level size. He's got really good skating ability for that size. So he has all the things on the surface that you want in a prospect, especially for a defenseman. My biggest issue with him is he's, in my eyes, a boomer bust. I know a lot of people disagree with that evaluation, but a lot of the viewings that I had on Simon Evanson, his defensive zone positioning and his defensive zone play overall was very, very raw. Against the rush, he played really well. He was good at gap control, good at using his stick defending the rush, good at angling guys to the outside. But once the opposing team established offensive zone control, he struggled with positioning. He would get drawn out of position and give up, a guy in the slot for an opportunity. He was just very inconsistent with his positioning in the defensive zone. And he's very, very aggressive offensively, which won't translate very well to the NHL level. He needs to tone down his aggressiveness, and that's what concerns me. But if he can hit, and again, it's Steve Yzerman that we're talking about here. If he can hit, and he's in the right organization to do so, he could be an elite
for development purposes. Like Detroit is one of the best organizations because you have the experience of Steve Yzerman, you have experience of Pat Verbeek, you have experience of other guys who have been there, done that before.
Exactly.
And just I think Edvinson has bigger chance of hitting in a team like Detroit than he has in some other teams who might not have the best resources, or I don't want to say intelligence because they are not dumb, but
experience.
Don't have the experience and the I would say it, intelligence to develop him into the player that he projects to be if he hits his at least 75% of his potential.
Exactly. Yeah, and again in Detroit, there's a good chance he'll get that.
I trust Detroit enough that I would take those players.
Like if he went, so for whatever reason, if New Jersey decided not to take Jack's brother, Luke, at 4, and they took Simon Evanson instead, I would be extremely concerned because I don't think New Jersey will develop him the way that Detroit will. I could be completely wrong. New Jersey guys, don't come flying at me, but point is he landed.
I'm concerned about Luke as well. Like there are some legit concerns there.
Yes, big time. With the Detroit next pick, they took Sebastian Cossa. We already talked about him. Not a bad pick by any means. Shai Buyum. I hope I'm saying that right. I don't know.
I have no clue.
Buyum, again, he is really good in transition. He's got really good offensive instincts for a defenseman. He's got good situational awareness offensively too. Like his offensive instincts are high end. If he sees an opportunity to push the pace offensively, more times than not, he's going to take that opportunity. He's not as calculated all the time, so the consistency levels there on occasion arise, but for the most part, he's very calculated in his offensive zone risks that he takes. And his skating needs work. That's okay. He's got good size. He's already 6'3", 214 pounds. So he's got good size. You can't have great size and great skating like a Victor Hedman or a Simon Edmondson to compare to guys in his age group. You're not going to have that every time. But he's got good size, good offensive instincts. He's got a really good shot from the point, and he loves using it. There's value to be had in that. He's really good in the defensive zone. He uses his big frame extremely well. Good stick work. He's just a very projectable player in my eyes, and I think that's another really good pick by Detroit. And again, the perfect organization for him to fall to. Carter Mazer was their next pick, captain for the Tri-City, which there's value in having a leader like him. He is 19, so this is his second year eligible for the draft. So an older player there. But again, he's another one of those jack of all trades, master of none-esque players. He's good in all three zones.
Yep.
And again, there's value to be had in that. If he can be more aggressive offensively, get to the dirty areas a little bit more, get to the high danger areas a little bit more, he could be a really good pick down the road. Now, I'm sure you're going to have a say on this next one, Liam Dorr-Nilsson, because he was a guy that I had in my late second, early third range. So I did like Liam Dorr-Nilsson.
I was surprised he was picked so low, to be honest with you.
Yeah. He is a guy that has absurdly high hockey IQ. He's another one of those guys that just reads the play really, really well, both with and without the puck. Like, his vision is really good, and he knows what to do with the puck. But he's more like an Andre Palat type of player, where he's not going to lead anything. He's simply going to do stuff.
Complimentary player for third line. Sure.
Exactly. He's one of those guys that he's going to make his line mates better because he does things that they don't. And he is a threat in his own right. So teams have to respect his skill set, but he'll also pick you apart if you make one mistake. So he has good upside in my eyes. I know, I believe it was Smart Scouting that said that he's one of the boomer bust guys in this draft class. So for him to fall as late as he did, that's good on Detroit for getting him. And again, he's a guy that's going to the right system for him.
Yep.
And
Yep.
And then their last pick, don't really know anything about him, Pascal Zito, but the pick before that, Oscar Plandowski. Now,
one of the best skaters this year, I believe.
I agree.
It's flawless.
And I don't know if you remember. I don't know if you were still there at that point. Actually, no, you were there until the end, so you should remember this. For people watching, me and Sam do a yearly mock draft, and I don't know what team it was. I can't remember what team I drafted for that got this player, but Oscar Plandowski was my pick in the second round for this team. And I remember when I said Oscar Plandowski, you made a face. I know Joel made a face too. So I was like, all right, wait, whoa. Let me explain. And I had to explain Oscar Plandowski for a little bit. Oscar Plandowski is a really good skater, but he was utilized poorly, in my opinion, with the Charlottetown Islanders.
Charlottetown team is just weird.
Yeah.
The usage is weird.
Yeah, Lucas Cormier plays for the Charlottetown Islanders. He's their offensive quarterback when he's on the ice, right? So he's the guy that's controlling the pace from the blue line, quarterbacking the play at 5-on-5 or on the power play. And Plandowski plays on the second pair below Cormier. And so in my viewings, it was, okay, they want a quarterback on all three pairs. They picked Plandowski to be the quarterback of that second pair, kind of in the mold of Lucas Cormier. They played fairly similarly in my viewings. But the biggest difference is Plandowski does not have good decision-making in the offensive zone, and he doesn't have that killer instinct offensively to be that guy, to be that quarterback. That's just not his style. But what I did notice is his defensive zone play was fantastic. He was one of the best, if not the best, QMJHL defenders in my trackings when it came to defending against the rush. Transitionally, moving the puck up the ice. He was the best QMJHL defender that I tracked.
Mostly due to his skating, to be honest.
Yeah. It's
so efficient with his skating that he can leverage. He's a player that leverages his skating into all aspects of the game, and that's what's given me hope that he would be something on next level.
Yeah, and again, I had to pull up my track stats because it paints a really, really good picture of Plandowski. He had a 61.1% controlled exit percentage this year in games that I tracked. The average for all CHL defenders that I tracked was 36.85%. Controlled entry percentage Oscar Plandowski was up at 64.3%. Among all CHL defenders that I tracked, the average was 35.45%. He is so efficient at moving the puck up the ice. It is insane. So Plandowski was one of those sleeper picks that I was like, whoever gets him is going to be very happy with their pick.
There is a lot to work with. There.
Yes, absolutely. His offense needs a lot of work. Decision making, his offensive IQ is not there. A lot of the viewings that I had, he would get the puck and he wouldn't process any, like he wouldn't scan the ice. He'd just get the puck and think, throw it on net, and he would throw a shot into a shin pad.
Who is safe comparison? Travis Dermott?
Travis Dermott is a good one.
I would say that's the safest one. Like, but you're still getting a guy that has not only one skill that might put him on into the NHL, but multiple ones.
Yeah, skating is the biggest one, and that's what allows him to play a two-way game and be so efficient in transition. That is incredible value for Detroit. And again, the development staff in Detroit is fantastic. They're not going to put him in a role to be a quarterback. They're going to put him in a specific role to be a puck-moving, generally defensive defenseman. That's what he's going to be. Sure, the experience that he got playing offensively in Charlottetown is important because if he's ever put in a situation where, hey, play some offense here, try to push the pace a little bit, he'll know what to do because he was in that role for an entire season and probably next season too in the juniors. So he'll know what to do. He just isn't very efficient at it, but there's still so much value to be had with Plandowski, and that's just a great pick. He was one of my favorite players for good reason because of his transitional play and how much I value transitional play. Maybe I value it a little bit too much. I'm not going to lie. I do put a lot into the transitional aspect of the game, but it is so important in today's NHL. Plandowski is good in two of the three zones. He needs a lot of work in his offensive game, but the value to be had at that spot with that pick is just too high to ignore because, again, Detroit's development staff is just absurd, and he could very well develop into a good, I would say, number 4 defenseman is safe for Plandowski. I know I talked to Gabe Foley. He thinks bottom pairing is a good shout for Plandowski, but again,
still good for a 6-rounder.
Exactly, still very good.
Like, if you get NHLer past round, I don't know, 3, like that's a steal of a pick.
You're just taking a flyer, and Liam Dorr-Nilsson could be a steal of a pick. Oscar Plandowski could be a steal of a pick.
So yeah, Detroit got a good haul.
Very good haul. Yeah, once again. Yeah, so big fan of the Detroit class, big fan of the Dallas class. Nothing against them. But before I let you go, Sam, I have to ask. We talked about it sparingly at the beginning, but I want to bring it up again because I think these are the clear losers of this draft. Not in any bad way because they could all prove us wrong, but the Ottawa Senators draft class, man.
Jesus. I mean, with all due respect to Ottawa scouts and personnel and everyone involved, but that's just like you are taking guys who are ranked in hundreds, if even, on some boards. Like some guys they took in round 3 was a guy that's ranked that was ranked like 185 by McKinn's Hockey and like nothing else, like 200 something on NHL Central Scouting.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why did they pick him and like see 6'4", 220 defenseman and like okay, whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
weird because okay, yeah, they had some questionable picks before, like trading up for Tyler Cleven.
Yeah,
kicks right into mind. But still, like a guy
like,
that
the only
Shane
guy
Pinto, they drafted Shane Pinto in round 2, I believe, and he's going to be a good top 9 forward for them.
Yeah. So I mean, you have to respect the process because it's worked so far for Ottawa, and I know a lot of Senators fans are saying the same thing, where it's worked for them before, going a little off the board. So
If
you can't really, but they went off the board with every single pick, and that's the problem.
trusting the process is okay. Trusting the process is important if you have pieces to utilize that process correctly. And
Seems,
I'm not sure they got the pieces to utilize that process correctly.
yeah.
Like,
Um, Tyler Boucher is really the only guy I look at on their list of prospects that I can say could be an NHLer. Like Zach Ostapchuk's not that bad, but he's also
like,
not a second rounder in my, or at least
like
an early second rounder.
when I look at Ostapchuk, I think he's an AHLer, really good AHLer, and like that's it.
And Ben Roger, I didn't know he existed, and like I didn't know who he was.
Yeah,
Uh,
6'5" or whatever he was.
Oliver Johansson, don't really know much about him at all. Carson Latimer, I mean, I knew who he was, but I didn't think he was all that great. Hope he could hopefully prove me
Yeah.
wrong. And then Chandler Romeo sounds like a cartoon character. I had no idea who he was. I'm not trying to diss on these picks or like the prospects because obviously I tried playing hockey, played high school hockey, and I think I got a
They would
combined.
all beat me 1-on-1. I would be embarrassed by every single one of them.
Exactly. I tried. I played high school hockey all 4 years, and I got a combined total of maybe 50 minutes of ice time over like 80 games. So I'm not one to talk. So, but yeah, I mean, some of these picks, it just didn't make sense. Like Oturatu could have been Zach, could have replaced Zach Ostapchuk or Ben
What do
Roger.
they need overall if they got Aturatu at 39?
That would have been fantastic. And we would have looked at this draft class completely different. We would have been like, yeah, they didn't draft very, very well, but Ataratu in the second round, though, like that's really good. Like,
There is no one that you can really point at and go, okay, but this guy might be good.
yeah,
Besides, like, guy they picked at 10, which is like he should
yeah,
make it.
yeah.
Like that's he. If you pick a guy at 10, you are 100% sure he's making NHL.
Yeah. And I think he's got a really good shot at making the NHL, but the ceiling just isn't there, and that's what the problem is.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
like he's a good player. I'm not bashing the player. He's skilled guy. He's fast. He's physical. He's gonna be a good third liner on NHL level, I believe.
All right. So there you go. There's our draft recap. A little all over the place, but good hockey talk in general. A lot of knowledge can be gained from these conversations. I know I always learn whenever I talk to you, Joel, Tony, or any of the guys that we do the mock draft with.
Likewise,
It's different perspectives, and I've grown a lot because of it. Sam McGilligan, I've been reading his pieces recently. Those have been phenomenal pieces. I want to shout out Sam for a minute because
oh
if you
yeah, he's excellent. Habs fan, but excellent.
the skill, the article about skill from a micro and macro level blew my mind because he was like, I watch these players and I'm like, Kent Johnson's not as projectable, but like in my head, like why I just know like he's not that projectable. His style's not that projectable.
He worded what we all think
Yeah, exactly.
perfectly.
Perfectly. The 2022 class is going to be so much better for me because one, the skill level's just ridiculous for 2022. And additionally, I've learned so much. I'm going to take that micro macro skill set and I'm going to utilize what Sam said and break down players even deeper than I did this.
Exactly.
Whoever's watching, if you're into,
Go
draft
go
prospects,
follow Sam as
yeah,
well.
Sam is
And
fantastic. Additionally, check out Dobber. I know Tony moved on, so there's some fresh blood in Dobber. So in 2022 is going to be
I'm
a
the
great
veteran there. Oh, yeah.
that big things to come for you then at Dobber. So definitely check out Dobber Prospects for this upcoming season. Sam, obviously, you do great work with Dobber. So obviously, guys, check out Sam's work at Dobber. I work with Last Word with Ben Kerr. one of the guys that's really well known in the scouting community. I work with him, so I've learned a lot from him as well. Check out Ben's work because what I see, he sees too. We bounce off of each other really well. So check out Ben's work. Check out Gabe Foley's work. I know I mentioned him a few times. He's another really, really smart scout. So that'll do it for us today, Sam. Again, as always, I appreciate your time and your knowledge coming on with me and talking draft. We're going to do this again next year, most likely, pending,
Yeah, absolutely.
pending, future if we're available still. And next year, again, we'll do a recap and a mock draft and have a lot of fun with it again. So I
Oh yeah,
appreciate.
absolutely. I
I,
appreciate you having me.
uh,
Thanks a
have a
lot,
good one.
buddy.